Robin Lawrence was home alone with her 2-year-old daughter in Springfield, Virginia, when she was murdered by an unknown assailant. Now, her daughter would have to fend for herself at the crime scene for 2 days until Robin's body was found. Nearly 30 years after the murder, the investigation led the cold case detectives to a surprising suspect who seemed very eager to talk to them. 48 Hours correspondent Anne-Marie Green spoke with CBS News Boston's Joe Weil about the latest episode of the show.
All right, we're now joined by 48 Hours correspondent Anne-Marie Green. And Anne-Marie, thanks so much for being with us. And let's discuss the cold case of Robin Lawrence, a woman from Virginia who was killed in her home by an unknown assailant back in 1994. What can you just tell us about Robin, the woman herself?
Oh, man. I mean, when I think of her, I think of just all the potential that was lost. She was a young mother, an artist. She got a fine arts degree from Carnegie Mellon University. And one of her kind of early accomplishments is she was chosen to sculpt the very first medal for the Martin Luther King Jr. Nonviolent Peace Prize. Now, the person who received that was Rosa Parks. And part of the reason that it's so fitting that Robin was the artist chosen to do the sculpture is because Robin's parents grew up in the Jim Crow South. They know, what it is like. And so to see their daughter participate in something like this was one of their proudest moments. You should know Robin's dad is still alive. He is 101 years old. We interviewed him. He never thought he would see the day where there would be justice for his daughter.
So this is such a strange case. Why do you think it took investigators so long to find the killer?
Yeah, it is. They had DNA, but this is 1994. I mean, DNA technology is not what it is today. And so it literally took decades to get to the point where we can now use a genetic genealogy, right? Familial DNA. And that's really what made the biggest difference in this case. The problem with this is that even though they could figure out 1,500 different DNA relatives to the suspect, it was a mountain to get through. It was like looking for a needle in a stack of needles. The Fairfax County Police Department worked with a firm. That firm told them, listen, it's probably a 0% chance that we're going to be able to figure out in all of this and these 1,500 cousins who might be the killer. You should probably give up. The police department took all that information and gave it to a volunteer, a grandmother. She worked at home for 3 years during the pandemic, no pay. She followed up on all of those branches of that family tree until she zeroed in on a killer.
Wow. And, nearly 30 years later, the investigation, the DNA part of it too, but the suspect, the surprising suspect, he became eager to talk about this. Why did a suspect come forward to talk about it after all this time later?
So, this is a question that we maybe will never know. I mean, all we know is what Stephen Smirk has told us, right? And it seemed like what he wanted to do was to take responsibility for this crime. By this time, he is a married man living in the suburbs. He has teenage kids, and he seemed to also want to maybe kind of relieve the burden from his family too, because he knew what they were about to go through. And so, yes, he confesses, but I got to tell you, he's got all kinds of, I don't know if we can call them excuses or maybe reasons as to why he did something this brutal. And you're really going to have to watch The Hour to decide whether or not if you believe him.
Now, you spoke with a neighbor who found Robin's body. How emotional was that interview?
Yeah. So that she actually wasn't a neighbor. She was Robin's really, really good friend. Robin's husband was out of town and he was frantic. He was trying to get a hold of her. And so he called her friend to go over there. It was incredibly emotional for her to retell that story, to relive that moment, going into that house and seeing Robin's daughter standing in the kitchen with a vacant look on her face, looking down the hall and glimpsing the crime scene and knowing that something very, very bad has happened in that house. It was It was a nightmare. It was an absolute nightmare. And she scooped up Robin's daughter, brought her to the hospital, but then she had to make that excruciating phone call. She had to call Robin's parents. And she says she will never forget the sound of Robin's mother screaming in the background, hearing that her daughter was dead.
What are the emotions of the family members now that this case has come to a close and that there is a suspect and now we know who ultimately killed her?
Yeah, of course they are relieved. This is a really accomplished family. Like I keep saying, this is a very classy family. They're not the kind of family that's going to sort of scream and yell and cry. They're very composed. They were very relieved, but they wanted a trial. They wanted Smirk to have to sit in that courtroom and hear the details of his dastardly deed, if you will. And so they felt like that was taken away from them a little bit. But, you can never really get justice, really. But knowing that he's going to be incarcerated for probably the rest of his life has made all the difference.
You can watch the new episode coming up on Saturday at 10 p.m. our time on CBS and Paramount Plus. 48 Hours correspondent Anne Marie Green, thanks so much for the time. We look forward to watching it.
Thank you.